What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark. And we're back with the title track from Dazzle Ships, which in the moment, I'm forgetting what year that's from. Give me one moment. 83, yes. That's what I would have guessed, I promise, but one likes to be precise about these things. In any case, yeah, we are up to the title track. I've mentioned since the very beginning, there's this odd allure to the title, even though it's a phrase, a coming together of two words I had never encountered before this album, so I don't quite know what to make of it, but dazzle suggests some sort of flash or flare that draws attention, something that shines and radiates some form of allure relative to the surrounding elements, and to call something a ship is to say whether you're talking on the ocean or in the sky, you are referring to something that is a form of conveyance, a form of moving people to one place to another, or I suppose moving cargo. But yeah, whether ships is more literal or more figurative, I'm not certain, but I've been wondering about this title since we started the album, so let's get to it. This is the title track of Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark, Dazzle Ships, from 1983, and the album of the same name. No insight on Dazzle Ships. Obviously, that was more of a instrumental interlude, and not a musical one at that. Again, I get it. They've shown themselves to be more than willing to make conceptual sort of art pieces in their albums. I've commented on multiple occasions that I'm amused by the way their tracks are at least in a number of cases, not straight away like synth pop songs, but they're very like abstract and experimental, much more than I would have ever known. This one was like peak that. It feels like the sounds were like right on the edge. They were like right near the red line. But yeah, intense, industrial sounds. I'm more inclined to like see like large, cargo boats on the sea, given the nature of some of the sounds. But indeed, if you were up in space, if it's a spaceship and you can't hear anything. But ultimately, yeah, like a non-musical piece. Not knowing that was the case, I downloaded only this. So what I probably will do is try to, in this same batch, get the next track and do that. that reaction and then put them together in a single video. So that's the plan. Luca knows nothing about this in the moment, but she will presumably be part of it, although I do have to get more tea, and sometimes when I go and get more tea, she wanders out in the living room, and so she may not be here when we come back, but either way, as I said, I didn't realize this wasn't so much a tune per se, though again, it really does fit into what I've been saying, where like, again, imagine the studio executives like, okay, so you have a title track on the album, okay, what's the title track? And then they listen, they're like, but it's not a piece of music, it's like, you know, sonic art, like abstract industrial sonic art, and like, yeah, like, okay, you guys are unconventional, which, you know, fair to say, and I don't remember if I made this comment when doing the last reaction, but I recently have been watching some of the early Depeche Mode documentaries, and in the very first one, where Vince Clarke was around, he talks about how when they got together, when they formed in the very earliest days, pre-Speak and Spell, they essentially wanted to be like OMD or the Human League, and so, you know, to name check those two groups, and given what other people have said, it does make sense to me that, you know, they were very influential to some electronic based acts that came about just after this. But yeah, ultimately, it does make sense that Vince saw them as a sort of inspiration. And, you know, having heard Yazoo's I Before E, I suppose, you know, it did spread to the penchant for making crazy, abstract, non-music tracks as well. In any case, Luca, I do have to get up. She's like perfectly positioned herself to make this a difficult transfer. We'll see if we can do this. But yes, do let me know what you think of this. I will be back for the other track, and I suppose it will run right into now. And we're back. And I have foregone getting extra tea, so Luca is still a party to this OMD journey. So the next tune in the playlist, is The Romance of the Telescope. I like the phrase. You know, there are people who have drawn attention to the humanistic benefits and you know, profound or inspiring attitudes that can derive from understanding, from knowing, and, you know, scientific endeavor is the ultimate quest to try to understand, whether we're talking about the galaxy or biology or other matters. So yeah, The Romance of the Telescope in one respect makes me think of that, the idea of the telescope representing a major step forward in human understanding of the cosmos, although, you know, fair to say the way in which the technology has refined has, of course, enhanced over time and allowed us to see much farther, but despite careful observations for millennia of the stellar movements and so on, the telescope is an invention of the last few hundred years. So yeah, it could be in relation to that, but I feel like maybe also, even if it is that, there could be an irony or a twist to it. There could be some other take that's less, you know, completely or sincerely positive and, you know, romance in terms of viewing something with a positive notion or interpretation. So yeah, ultimately it's an interesting phrase, and one that seems to mix the emotional with the technological, which is, you know, not always the juxtaposition that you see. Let's find out what it's about, and perhaps this will be actual music, which, again, that's not a knock on the track Dazzle Ships, but, you know, it was a track, not a tune. I think that's a fair assessment. But here we go. This is OMD, Orchestral Manoeuvres in the Dark, and the track is The Romance of the Telescope from Dazzle Ships, 1983.
Citizens of the
it's a tune. It's, it's musical, certainly more than um, Dazzle Ships, but yeah, it's another one. It's abstract. It's almost like deliberately languid and slowly unfolding. I'm not sure. Again, there were a couple lines that struck me as intriguing, or at least that I heard in part, but I didn't hear anything like clearly about the telescope and the romance of it. So I'm not sure. I look forward to people's comments, but again, it's not like an obviously catchy sing-along like pop tune. It's, this whole record, and seemingly most of their early career is really forging their own territory, which is funny because, again, going into this deep dive, it's, If You Leave is the only tune I probably would have known, in any meaningful sense. And it just feels like the majority of what we've heard is just, miles away. And fair to say, I mentioned the connection to the Human League, Vince Clarke referring to them both. When I listened to Reproduction, I was like, man, like this is very different from the 2 or 3 tracks I think I've heard from Dare, and ultimately, basically from the later version of the group. And I remember thinking like, wow, like this, this is not the Human League I thought, that I knew. So it's definitely been the same with OMB. So shout out to them for being very original, just, definitely not trying to just make simple poppy hits, which, I did mention Depeche Mode. Obviously, they started in a very kind of like, hit, like teen, like pop sort of sound, and developed into their now much more well-known, or like much more characteristic sound of heavy, brooding, like electro-industrial blues type of sounds. But yeah, so it's just interesting the way that groups draw inspiration from someone, and then, they put their own stamp on it, their own musicianship on it, and it can end up sounding very, very different, even though at the core of it, part of the inspiration was this other group that does sound different. So a cool connection. Do let me know what you think. Luca and I will see you next time. And perhaps by then I will have gotten myself tea that is not very room temperature cold. In any case, I'll see you then. Peace.